Chapter 301. Unsaved Innocence. He had gained 2645 XP from his fight inside the head, which they had since abandoned. Jay, Blue, and Sweeper made it to the portal. This was the last defensible location, and there was still an entire army of knights to slay, all of who were marching on them with fury. Jay could only rely on the height of the route to keep them from being swarmed by a wave of steel soldiers. He could not release any bones, either. They would only help the knights to climb up. Jay pushed his hand against the portal once more, but it only rebounded from him, and strangely, shrunk slightly. Damn it. Every time I touch it, it shrinks. Knights ran along the route, clashing against Blue and Sweeper, who held their ground. Instead of killing the knights, they pushed them back down, otherwise, they would overrun them. Yet Jay could already tell it was a losing battle. The skeletons were being pushed back and damaged, and he was barely keeping them from climbing up at the sides or giving the skeletons some backup. At first, he was a few steps away from the portal, but now he was almost pushed up against it. Fuck. Red and the others better be doing something important. Explore the labyrinthine roots of this substance at NOV/LSZN. Meanwhile, some intelligent knights found their way to the front line. Instead of using their weapons to fight, they were reaching up from below, trying to pull Jay and his skeletons down by their ankles. One of their hands soon found Jay's foot, but he responded instantly. Not today, fucker. He smashed the bottom of his shield against it. It crunched down onto it, yet it held on and pulled, protected under its armor. Before it could pull him down, Jay released an unstable tooth. Boom. It burst against the knight's chest. The shockwave sent his head reeling back. It released its grip as it fell backwards. Your skeleton has been slain. Fuck. Jay turned back. Sweeper had been taken. A circle of knights had formed in the crowd, each of them stabbing their weapons into a pile of bone dust. Without Sweeper, the knights pushed Blue back. Jay immediately re-summoned Sweeper, yet by the time it constructed, Jay's back was against the portal, which shrunk even further as he touched it. Distracted with summoning, another knight grasped his ankle. Sweeper pounced and clawed at the knight grabbing Jay, but to little effect. Fuck. Blue, help. Jay called. Blue immediately turned. Seeing its master in peril, it jumped right onto the knight in the crowd of them below. Other knights raised their weapons to strike Blue down. It would perish in moments. With its one last attack, it slipped a sword right through the knight's armor and killed it. Blue saved Jay, but lost its own life. Fuck, nothing about this shitty dungeon makes sense. Everyone is tainted. As for Innocent. CLING. Jay parried a sword strike. The knights marched along the route with only Sweeper to stop them. Boom. Jay launched another exploding tooth, sending them reeling. Dropping all precautions in defense, he ran forward, slashing and stabbing any exposed flesh he could. He dropped them to their knees and severed as many spines as he could. Swords rained down on him, but his helmet took the brunt of the attacks, and his skeletal T-visor helmet and vambraces blocked others. A stray sword carved into his leg, forcing him to his knee. All for the fucking Innocent, but where are they? Don't they fight their own battles? He grit his teeth and fought through the searing pain in his leg as he stood up. Another knight laid its hand on his ankle. Jay dropped his sword. Who is Innocent? Fucking no one. No one is innocent. He yelled. Just as he was about to get pulled into the crowd and skewered to death, his hands filled with teeth. Many of them even fell through his fingers. If I'm going out, I'm taking all you fuckers with me. Ha ha ha. He laughed maniacally as his eyes widened. I'll bring this whole fucking crucible down. Swords dug into his flesh as he grinned like a maniac. He fell into the swarm of knights, a sea of swords. With handfuls of teeth, he pumped them full of all the mana he had. Suddenly, the root stopped pumping. The portal closed. Everything, apart from Jay, suddenly froze. Time stopped. Jay panted, lying on his back with handfuls of teeth. The sharpened tips of swords were right before his eyes. What the fuck? What did Red do? Immediately, he pulled the mana back out of the unstable teeth spells, trying to stop himself from blowing up catastrophically. While stashing them back into his inventory, a string of messages floated in front of his eyes. Innocent unsavable. Innocent saved. Dungeon complete. Unlocking in process. Time dilation normalizing. Distributing first clear rewards. First clear bonus 10,000 XP. Innocent found 0 XP. Hidden path out of Crucible found 0 XP. Crucible resealed 0 XP. Experiment ceased 10,000 XP. Research stolen back from unknown 0 XP. Trinket quest discovered. Trinket saved 0x. What the fuck is this going on about, Jay thought, reading in disbelief. Are these all quests I failed? He wasn't even sure if the dungeon was completed because he yelled out a philosophical answer, or because Red did something. There was a chance it accepted his answer, or perhaps it was just a coincidence. The messages continued. Distributing rewards. Save the innocent. Quest complete, level up. First clear rewards. Passive skill. Alternative completion. Item reward. You have leveled up. You have gained a passive skill. You have gained a new item. Are you fucking joking? Jay yelled, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. He was still lying on the ground with swords pointed at him. He wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. Instead, with little willpower, he whispered. So I'm not even meant to be down here. I was supposed to investigate and explore more of the dungeon like a normal person. Instead, I went right to slaying monsters. He shook his head, checking the notifications again. And there's some hidden path out of the crucible, too. I'm not even meant to be in this damn castle and someone is innocent here. Shit. He shook his head. And what, or who, is Trinket? A person. A town. Jay sighed. He closed his eyes and lay his head back onto the cold stone floor, resting it for a moment in the black fluid which had since covered it. Jay took in a deep breath and a long sigh. Get me the fuck out of here, he said. Suddenly, roots sprang from the ground and caved around him. Ah yes, why not? One more fucking insult from this dungeon. He kept his eyes closed. The roots coiled around his body, forming a cocoon of darkness, and the next moment, Jay found himself back in the cave. Nighttime. He was in the real world again, in a mountainous forest. He heard the distant screech of an animal amid creaking trees. Jay sensed Red, Handy, and Lamp circled around him. He slowly cracked his eyes open as he glanced up at them. We did it. He slightly smiled. We fucking did it, boys. Chapter 302. Liar. Jay lay in the cave, no longer coated in giant blood or black tar after leaving the dungeon. Lamp, Handy, hunt me some food. Leaving Red to guard Jay, the two skeletons left the cave, only carrying the bone swords with them. Jay let out a sigh, still thinking about the dungeon. So, there are no innocent, huh? How'd I come to that conclusion? He shook his head, though he couldn't shake the thought. The dungeon deems someone innocent. I suppose, ultimately, it depends on who declares you innocent. As the dungeon ended, Jay was not sure if it was him or whatever his skeletons did on the other side of the portal, but it didn't matter now. He was just glad that he didn't have to furiously fight his way out of that mess. However, his blood was still pumping, and his breathing was a little unsteady. But was I going to fight out? What was I thinking? He sat up, clenching his hands, remembering the handfuls of teeth he had in them. The ones he was about to detonate in a glorious explosion. Where did those thoughts even come from? He stood up and dusted himself off, not ready to step out of the darkness of a cave, as he summoned Blue and Sweeper, who both perished in the swarm of knights. While Blue and Sweeper reformed, he noticed a pair of purple eyes glaring at him from outside the cave. A stout skeleton in armor stood idly at the side. Azra, Jay asked. Where have you been? She snapped, her voice cold. Ah, Azra, Jay said, sounding happy. That's what they call me. Now, where have, Bob? Jay walked towards her, and strangely, even to his own surprise, he pulled her shoulders into a hug. She stood there with her arms at her side, looking confused more than anything. Bob. Jay released her after a moment. Sorry, it's nice seeing a familiar face in the real world. I just escaped a locked dungeon. Azra sighed. HMPH, I'll forgive it this time. How long were you in there? Jay forced his face to remain emotionless as he looked at her with an icy stare. 10 years. It's been 10 long years. I built a whole other life in there. I had a family. I was a shoemaker. 10 years. Is it a lot of time for a husk? It's about half of our lifespan. Jay said slowly, lying again. Well, at least you didn't age. She shrugged. And you're still level 4. How is it even possible? Well, with excellent footwear, the soldiers could cover vast. Azra cut him off. I get the point. You made shoes forget I asked. It's probably better if you forget, too. Azra sighed. Now, do you remember you're supposed to be taking me home? Only a few hours have passed for me. Right, home back to Moon School. Jay raised a brow. Luna Academy. Azra shook her head. The initial posting of this chapter occurred via Novelbin. Re-eyed Luna. Jay nodded slowly. Anyway, I'm hungry. Hold out your arm. Jay did as she said, letting her draw near again. Instead of clumping her mouth down onto him, she held her finger out. Her nail grew longer and turned black like a stiletto dagger. "Ah, that's different," Jay said, not feeling anything as the nail pierced his flesh. "You seem like you've been through a lot. At least you look like it, anyway. This is a more gentle way to feed, though it requires some concentration on my part." "Oh, thanks. But why? I thought I was an empty-minded husk to you, and besides, I'm used to the pain, anyway." Azra looked away, glancing into the forest. "Just say thanks." Jay gave her a quizzical look. Well, thanks." He nodded, thinking she was acting strange. "I wonder if she's grown attached. She has been alone, caught by the bloodvine bear for a while, and then I was the first person she saw, the one who saved her," Jay wondered. Yet, after a few moments, he dismissed the thoughts. "No. I'm probably just a tool to her, like I am to everyone else." Jay glanced at her as she fed. She seemed to change. She looked different from the last time he saw her. A few days ago, she was weak, skinny and pale. She looked like a teenage girl, but as she drank his blood, her body turned into that of a young woman. Her body was recovering, and strangely, aging. "Say, Azra, what's the lifespan of a vampire?" "We're not exactly sure. The oldest vampire I heard of was maybe 300 years old." "Fuck 300. Don't swear." "And yes, 300. Sadly, being so old attracts him. How do I describe them? I suppose it's not something you ought to worry about." "Ah, come on, we have time, and I'm interested." Jay smiled. "There are these creatures which hunger for our flesh. The older we get, the more tasty we become, I suppose. Perhaps they get more power from consuming us. I'm not sure." Azra scratched her chin. "What are these creatures?" Azra took a breath in, held it, and then let out a sigh. She stared into the forest for a moment. "Don't worry about them. It's our problem to solve." "I say, do these creatures eat skeletons?" She glanced at Heavy, still standing by her side, diligently guarding her. "No, your skeletons are safe. They're not even interested in husks." "Oh, good." Jay nodded. "One less threat I need to worry about," he thought. When Azra finished feeding, Jay began constructing a temporary sleeping area. Just under the lip of the cave, he formed a bone platform. With his new mana regeneration passive, he wasn't worried about wasting mana, and he spread a thin veil over the top to bind the bones together and flatten them out. Jay yawned as he unrolled his swag and prepared his bedding. While in the dungeon, nearly 3 days had passed, and he had little sleep, despite only a few hours passing in the real world. After the dungeon was complete, Jay still had 10 attribute points and 2 skill points to distribute, as well as a new passive skill to gain, along with a new item, which was a bonus reward. He planned to distribute them now. However, as soon as Jay's head hit his pillow, his eyelids grew heavy. He knew he was not thinking clearly, having scattered thoughts. "Azra, I'm going to sleep. Please watch over me," he said with closed eyes. Azra gave him a strange look, wondering why he would even ask such a thing, especially since he had 3 skeletons guarding over him. "Shouldn't you be asking me not to feed on him while he sleeps? Beg for mercy or freedom from my control," she thought. Oddly though, there was something about it which warmed her vampiric heart. "The husky trusts me." Chapter 303. Vampire's Leisure. The night was like daytime to Azra. After Jay had been sleeping for a while, she scouted the area. Really, she just wanted an excuse to run, to stretch her legs. She blinked away into the night like a praying shadow. Heavy, who was still guarding her, could not keep up as she weaved through the trees. Still, the armored skeleton clung through the forest, creating a noisy racket as it followed her as best as it could. Azra, strangely, enjoyed the feeling of being chased. Azra was enjoying toying with the skeleton, showing a glimpse of herself by one tree, disappearing when the skeleton drew near and appearing somewhere else. After a while, the skeletons near Jay moved around in the forest. Curious, she went to investigate. One of them had brought back a skinless animal of some sort. It appeared to be a type of river sloth. Where the skeleton found it, she had no clue. As for its skin, Lamp had already incorporated it into the fur cape, slowly growing on its back. Sweeper had gathered sticks, and was venturing out for more, while Blue had just made the first embers of a fire, which had nurtured into a flame. Lamp dumped the corpse and disappeared into the forest again, probably to hunt more creatures of the night. Red butchered the corpse, handing pieces of meat to Blue, who held them near the fire with his hand, leaving the cooked meat in a pile nearby. "He won't like it if it goes cold." Azra whispered, and stored them in her inventory. Perhaps Blue didn't understand and seemed to look at Azra with shock as she stole Jay's meat, yet it couldn't do anything about it. Jay ordered them not to slay her. Before Lamb could come back with another corpse, all Blue could do was tend to the fire, though periodically it ripped out some bone from Jay's platform and munched on it. Red, similarly, ate parts of the platform. I wonder why Sweeper and the other skeletons aren't eating. The only difference she noticed was that Red and Blue were level 5. As they ate away at Jay's platform, their bones seemed to get thicker and grew taller, reaching 6'2", 188 centimeters. The spectral armor grew larger to suit their bodies, and each took on subtle differences. Blue's T-visor helmet became more angular, and 2 triangle points poked up from each side of the ear area. Red's helmet merged the front T-visor part into a normal visor, leaving no gaps for its teeth. The jaw guard also went lower, covering more of its neck, and ending in a sharp triangle point. I wish my undead were as useful as his, she thought. After a while she grew bored with the skeletons, and headed into the cave Jay came from. She found the Savage Lands dungeon entrance, and seeing that it was now unlocked, she and Heavy disappeared into it. Azra found herself lying in a stone shack on a pile of withered branches. Her body felt slow and tired, and standing above her were 2 figures. One was Heavy, and another was a skinny human. The man had a dagger raised and was about to bring it down into her guts. Heavy moved to block him, but before the jagged stone dagger met his shield, Azra's eyes suddenly glowed. "You dare attack me," she scoffed. The man froze in place. His face turned to terror, and he didn't know what was going on. "Protect me," Azra ordered. Yet she was not speaking to Heavy, but to the cannibal. Immediately, he dashed to the door, right as another malnourished cannibal opened it up. Slice. The newcomer received a hand on the shoulder and a jagged rock in the throat as he pulled him into the room. For a moment, blood gurgled as their eyes turned dull and empty. So this is the dungeon Bob conquered. How could he have been stuck here for 10 years? She wondered. The enemies are so weak. She analyzed the cannibal, seeing it was level 4. Azra got up to walk outside, but the cannibal put his hands up, beckoning her to stop. She fully compelled him to protect her. "Don't you dare try to touch me," Azra glared. "I'm going outside." The cannibal looked conflicted for a moment, like he was struggling to come to terms with what it was about to do. Perhaps it was trying to fight back against Azra's vampire control. He clenched his jagged stone dagger and began breathing faster while he clenched his jaw. Suddenly, he slammed the door open, exiting first. Curious, Azra walked into the doorway and saw a crowd of cannibals holding torches, stone daggers, and bows. The cannibal Azra compelled sprinted away from her while a man in the crowd spoke. Someone named Grundle, the village elder. "Lay down your weapons and your death will be painless." He said, but he paused mid-sentence. The cannibal under Azra's control had sprinted towards him. None of them had their guard up, none suspected their own kind to attack them, until he drove his bloody jagged stone into the village elder's throat. Seeing a dead body, the entire crowd of cannibals fell into a hungry rage. Most of them focused on Azra, the outsider. She was not malnourished and skinny like they were, and her skin was pale, but pristine. Azra watched as a crowd of filthy husks came running at her with drool dripping from their mouths. "No thanks," she thought, and stepped back into the darkness of the shack. The cannibals came charging in with their torches, but all they found was a heavily armored skeleton, bracing against their charge. The girl, however, had disappeared as if she had never been there. Somewhere nearby, Azra watched. Looking bored as she leaned on a nearby hut, she watched from the shadows. "I better leave before they kill Heavy," she thought, seeing them rush into the house. None of them were aware of her presence. The initial posting of this chapter occurred via Novelbin. Yet before leaving, her fingers turned to long, slender claws. Her footsteps were silent as she went closer. No one noticed as she snatched someone from the crowd, pulling them quietly back into the darkness. Azra sunk her teeth into their neck, and her face instantly twisted in disgust. "Ugh. Filthy," she spat. Throwing the struggling villager down like a bag of trash, she willed to leave the dungeon. A capsule of roots formed around her, turning everything to darkness, and she found herself in the real world again with Heavy. Heavy stood by her side, having a few dents in its shield from the pathetic sharpened rocks they had battered against it. We better fix that before Bob realizes," she thought, tracing her fingers across the shield. She stood on the bone platform and pointed down. "Come on, Heavy." In a few moments, the skeleton happily ate as it guarded her, yet suddenly, something attacked her. Claws slashed across her leg. Chapter 304. Platoon. Some blood seeped from Azra's leg. What the? Glancing down, a small goblin-like skeleton had scraped its claws across her leg. Yet there was only the one attack with no follow-up. Blue had glared at it, and it stopped before it could do another. Stupid skeletons. Azra muttered, watching her leg heal up. You should have given it orders not to attack me before, you silly thing, she said to Blue. Blue tilted its head to the side, staring at her, and Azra couldn't tell if it understood her or not, as it then went back to ignoring her. Blue crouched down and gathered more bones, crafting a dagger, which it gifted to the smaller skeleton. Lamp brought back another corpse, and Red butchered it, yet strangely, it took the skull for itself. After cleaning the meat from the bones, it also summoned a smaller goblin-like skeleton, just like the one Blue controlled. It intrigued Azra. While she could summon zombies from corpses and flesh, she never imagined her undead could summon others. In fact, they definitely could not, they could barely carry their own weight. Blue cooked more meat, which Azra stored while she watched the new smaller skeletons patrol around the near Jay and the campfire. I guess they need more skulls to summon more of themselves, Azra thought. The platform Jay had constructed contained mostly long femur bones, which made the platform flat, but lacked all the bones for summoning. Azra tucked herself into the noon leather blanket, as the morning was coming soon. By the time morning came and she tucked her head into hiding, Blue had summoned another skeleton. Two had sloth skulls, making them look more like undead goblins, while another had a deer skull. The deer skull skeleton had fallen over a few times and seemed to wobble as it walked, so they hacked its antlers off. They were too heavy for its head and slowed it down too much. Hours passed, and Jay continued to sleep, catching up on a lot that he had missed. Yet his stomach grumbled, and finally, he woke up. I hope Lamb caught something, he said with a yawn. He heard a crackling fire and some sweet smells of meat. He couldn't help but smile as he slowly opened his eyes. Nice work, Blue, he nodded as the skeleton brought him a freshly cooked piece. But before Jay could inspect the meat, the new skeletons around the fire had startled him. Wait, who the hell is that? Jay pointed at the small skeleton near the campfire. It didn't move until Blue glanced at it, and it ran to Blue's side, along with a second smaller one. 2. 3 new skeletons. Jay saw another with Red. He was planning to praise his skeletons for crafting a campfire, butchering and cooking him some meat, as they took some initiative, but this was far out of Jay's expectations. Immediately, he analyzed one of them. Feeble creature level 1. Subconstructive Blue. Type Undead. HP 10/10. Skills. Undeath, passive. Shade Vision, passive. Description. An abomination, its existence spits in the face of life and death. Execute with extreme prejudice. Jay could sense it, as if it were one of his own undead, but he didn't feel a connection to it like his other skeletons. It's the same as my skeletons when they were level 1, except I can't control them, Jay thought. He had already tried to make it come to him, but it didn't respond at all. As it stood next to Blue, Jay finally noticed that Blue had become bigger, too. Jay glanced at Blue slyly. So, you leveled up and now you can summon, too. Don't let it go to your head, he winked. Blue stood there, staring. It had new segmented plate-like bones around parts of its ribcage and shoulders, and somehow, its level up had morphed its helmet into having 2 upwards pointing plates on the sides of the helmet, near the ears. Jay checked its stats. Skeleton Sergeant level 5, Blue. Type Undead. Any 00V Euros LS at 1N hosted the premiere release of this chapter. Role Commander. HP 108 108, plus 20, Equipment. MP 7/14. Skills. Sergeant 2/5. Bone Eater. Scrimshaw level 1, passive. Undeath, passive. Fear, weak, passive. Shade Vision, passive. Description. An abomination, its existence spits in the face of life and death, and they spit back. Stop it before it's too late. Execute with extreme prejudice. Burn the bones. Awesome, a sergeant. The first step to becoming my general. Jay nodded. He checked the other skeletons, and only Red was taller. So, how come only Red and Blue leveled up? The only time us 3 were together, when the giant died. Jay nodded, realizing they had gained all the undead exp from its death, while the other skeletons weren't present at the time. So, you're a sergeant. Good, I suppose it sucks. I can't command your skeletons directly, but it will take a lot of strain off my mind. Yes, it will be better this way. I don't want to repeat orders and micromanage all the time, and with a mind, Blue won't make them run mindlessly toward their deaths. Jay checked Red's stats next. Skeleton Guardian level 5, Red. Type Undead. Brill Guard. HP 116 116, plus 20, Equipment. MP, 611s. Skills. Guardian Master, a half. Guard, 1, passive. Bone Eater. Scrimshaw level 1, passive. Undeath, passive. Fear, weak, passive. Shade Vision, passive. Description. An abomination, its existence spits in the face of life and death, and they spit back. Stop it before it's too late. Execute with extreme prejudice. Burn the bones. Interesting, it has more health, and by the looks of it, it can only summon 2, but is that the only difference? He wondered, checking its new skills. Guardian Master. Can summon 2 Junior Guardian Skeletons. Junior Guardian Skeletons level up to reach 80% of Summoner's level. Current max level of 4. Telepathic communication, can share vision with sub-constructs, sense each other, and coordinate as if they were one. Guard level 1, passive. Threat sense, 1. A general increase in vigilance. But how is this different to Blue's? Jay wondered. Sergeant. Can summon 5 sub-skeletons. 5. Sub-skeletons can level up to reach 50% of Summoner's level. Current max level of 2. Can summon an additional skeleton on every level up. So Blue gets more skeletons as it's a commander, and Red gets fewer skeletons, but they are also stronger guardian types, and can level up to 4 instead of 2, Jay thought, scratching his chin as his lips began to curl. Well, that's just fucking awesome. He grinned. I have 7 skeletons, all of which can reach level 5, and once they do, can raise lesser skeletons. Assuming they can all raise about 3 skeletons on average, I will have 28 damn skeletons. Fuck yes. I've been wanting more skeletons, too. The only downside is that the lesser ones can't level up all the way to 5, but that's no downside at all, especially when there will be so many of them. Jay thought. I wonder if I can give them minds, too. Or summon them on the skeleton's behalf. Glancing around, he wondered why Blue and Red hadn't summoned all the ones they could. But he noticed the smaller skeleton each had skulls he didn't recognize, the river sloth skulls. Bones. Of course. He thought, and released enough complete skeletons for all of them. Red and Blue each summoned another, but Blue had to stop as it ran out of mana. Jay found he couldn't summon them for Blue either. Now I have 2 ability points to spend, too, but first, I should pack up camp and get moving. I'm still being hunted, and I overslept for far too long. Chapter 305. Deceiver. Your skeleton has died. Seems like Dark had found another friend. Jay thought. He was being carried on his throne again, through the forested mountains. Azra was being carried by several smaller goblin-like skeletons. Jay summoned Dark again, and finally, Jay was reunited with all of his skeletons. He had since given Red back the squire armor they found in the Savage Lands dungeon. Unfortunately, Lamp had lost its human skin suit, and the other skeletons had lost all of their armor. However, Jay was content with having 1 set of armor that Red wore, and Lamp still had its large fur patch area on its back, which seemed to be growing a cape or cloak of some sort. 4 of his higher-level skeletons carried the throne, and he had 3 spare walking around the party. Heavy was too small and wore thick spectral armor, so along with Dark and Handy, it patrolled around the party in a loose formation. Unfortunately for Heavy and Dark, they had missed out on exp while in the dungeon. Heavy was still level 2, Dark level 3. Now, my rewards for those painful few days. Jay said, opening the notifications. You have gained a passive skill. Deceiver's Scent. Blood carries the stench of lies. A person's blood will smell bad if they're lying to me, I'm guessing. Jay pricked his own finger and smelled nothing. I need to tell a lie, I can trust humans. Suddenly, Jay's face twisted in disgust as the blood on his finger smelled like a rotting corpse. Okay, I can't trust them. He admitted, and the scent immediately went away. I wonder how long the blood will smell for. What a useless skill. Jay thought. He could already see weaknesses in it. Someone could be lying about anything which would make their blood smell. Then there's the matter of having someone bleed. I could force them with the skeletons, but it won't always be that simple. I can't just summon them in human settlements. Practicality aside, this could also mean there's something so corrupting about lying that it even affects our blood, making it turn rancid, he wondered, scratching his chin. Or perhaps it's just the ability. He shrugged. I wonder if Azra can smell a liar's blood. Jay then opened the item notification. You have gained a new item. Needle of Hunger. Take away hunger or give it to whatever this needle pricks. Can cause rebound effects when used multiple times. A new item appeared in Jay's inventory, a long needle which was black on one end and white on the other. Well, this doesn't seem very useful either. Jay pricked himself with the black end and suddenly felt hungry. Not starving, but more like he needed a snack. Yet a rotting smell soon came over him. How I guess this counts as a lie, too, he thought, knowing his hunger was a lie. He pricked himself with the white end of the needle, and his hunger went away, along with the rotting smell. It may be good if I'm ever starving, as it would mask my hunger, but I would still need food. I suppose at least it would help me focus if that ever happened. Jay had tried to look on the positive side of things, but he couldn't help but feel disappointed by the rewards. At least I got 2 levels out of it. Jay had 10 attribute points, which he added all into his new mana attribute, which gave him bonus mana regeneration. He got more health simply by leveling up, but he felt it was quite low. I should invest more time into the skull shield projector research, he thought. Jay knew he was much stronger with his skeletons, but he knew that eventually he would be a weak target, and as the Necromancer, he would be the priority target for assassins. If he fell, they would all fall. But if I died, would my skeletons die too, or am I just assuming that? He wondered. Listen, all of you. If I am ever to fall and die, I want all of you to flee. Survive. Become stronger, improve your skills, and get revenge on whoever killed me. If they die, then rule over their offspring if they have any. The skeletons all seemed confused by the order. How could their master die? Still, they accept the order with a nod. That's a decent enough form of insurance for now. As long as one survives, they will have an eternity to train and become unstoppable and enact my revenge. Now, my skill points. Jay had 2 skill points. He reasoned that if he raised his undead mastery 2 levels, he could bring their max levels up to 7, adding 14 levels in total. However, 2 more points into his raise, lesser undead skill, would give him 2 skeletons capable of reaching level 5, adding 10 levels in total. Yet, it was not that simple with the existence of the skeleton subconstructs. If Jay gained 2 more skeletons, and they both became commanders like Blue, then a total of 20 levels would be added. Do I want a swarmer specialization, he thought. Well, Red and Blue are max level, and their exp will be shared with others. Plus, I want more skeletons. But if Blue levels up, I get an extra sub-skeleton, and its sub-skeletons will reach level 3. I'm already level 15 now, and the skeletons aren't even half my level. I don't want them becoming useless trash. Jay went with the middle path, adding 1 point into raise lesser undead and 1 point into undead mastery. This way, their levels would keep rising while he gained more minions. Now, let's see how far I've come as an aspiring Necromancer. He talked to his skeletons. Necromancer level 15, pure. Race human. HP. 270. This creation is firmly rooted in the depths of NOV Euros LSZN. MP. 148. Strength. 20. Dexterity. 25. Vitality. 35. Mana. 15. Energy. 50. Locked. Exp. 14,867. 81,920. Skills. Necromancy skills. Raise lesser undead, 2. Summon bone helmet. Shell restoration, 1. Unstable teeth, 2. Host, 1. Mind, 1. Mass summoning. Undead mastery, 5, passive. Necrotic sense, 1, passive. Scrimshaw, 3, passive. Soul sense, 1, passive. Shift living blueprints transplant amputation. Uncaring rip pitiful mortal. Other skills. Mana regeneration, 15. Mark. Mana sense, 1. Mental coding, 1. Deceiver's scent. Mana membrane, 1, passive. Iskian, equipment. Dagger proficiency, 1, passive. Poison resist, 11%, passive equipment. Running, 2, passive. Stealth, 1, passive. Stress response, passive. Sword proficiency, 1, passive. Class utility, passive. Research. Chimera research, 31%. Immortality research, 5%. Skull shield projector research, 32%. Dreadmorn turret research, 22%. Excellent. He smiled. Now, time to summon the new guy. I wonder what I should have it specialize into. Another commander would be nice, but I would like to have some sort of ranged attacker, other than the Helmet. I still need to copy the Helmet's Spectral Bolt spell before even attempting to teach it to a skeleton. As for necrotic magic, it's only effective against things with bones. Jay considered things on his throne for a moment, and the skeletons had carried them downhill, out of the thick forest and mountains covered in twisting valleys. Perhaps an archer or crossbow user, like Anya, he thought. It sucks that I don't have either weapon. A crossbow seems too technical to craft, as they have a trigger mechanism I don't understand, so an archer it is. He nodded. But that brings the problem of arrows. I don't want to be constantly crafting them for a skeleton archer who might not even hit its target. I suppose Blue could do it, and could teach the archer once it levels up and gains access to mana. Hopefully, when it hits level 5, it will get some archer sub-constructs, too. Chapter 306. Ghost Weaver. Jay raised the new level 1 skeleton, and had it walk alongside his throne as he talked to it, giving it a name. Your name is Archers. That's right, Archers with an S. He nodded. This will make it easier when I yell Archers, fire. In the future, hopefully. The skeleton clapped its jaws, accepting its name. Blue, teach it my ways. Blue glanced up at Jay and gave a nod, accepting his order. Jay watched them communicate in their strange silent skeleton language, as the young skeleton was bombarded with orders, including Jay's past orders. Always collect all, don't attack humans around Losla, and so on, until they reach Jay's last grand order of revenge, if you were ever to die. I wonder if they speak something other than Astraton. Jay wondered as he watched. I'll need to give Archers a mind too. The skeleton cohort had marched Jay downhill for a while, and the fresh forest air was replaced by a more humid, warmer one. Before reaching the bottom of the mountainous area, Jay had the troop stop, setting Azra down on a large flat rock, and lowering his throne to the ground. I don't want to stop for long, but the sooner they get mines, the better, he thought. The first to receive a mine was Archers, followed by Jay's other main skeletons, whom he missed. He gave them a moment to get used to their senses and their bodies again, before giving them the usual orders to guard him and Azra. Having a new mind, Archers noticed something. It looked lost or empty, as it had no weapons of its own. Even the sub-constructs had daggers that Blue had crafted for them. Relax, I'm getting to it. Jay hushed the skeleton. Curious as it was, it took a peek into the blanket wrapped around Azra. Azra gave an annoyed groan. Archers, stop it, Jay ordered. Yet Azra had woken. Jay, why are we moving? I had to stop. We won't be too long. Care to elaborate? Jay thought, damn it, what's a good lie, arg, my blood will stink if I lie. I suppose I'm not cut though, so I won't smell it. I guess the truth isn't that bad. She'll probably understand. I'm upgrading my skeletons before we leave the mountain forest. Downhill from us, there's a plain of rocks and a thick fog below that. Anything could be there, waiting in ambush. Azra was silent for a moment, but as Jay took out bones from his gauntlet to craft, she gave an order. Get us into the fog before nightfall. Jay glanced down the mountain. Between the mountain forests and the fog at the base of the mountains, there was a plain of volcanic and ancient rocks, all covered in a thick carpet of moss. Before nightfall. I think we can manage that. Jay nodded. Since they were no longer carrying Azra, the 5 skeletons of Blue fanned out, and did some perimeter patrolling in a wide area, while Red's 2 skeletons came to Jay's side. NEOV Euros LB1N was the first platform to present this chapter. It satisfied Jay to see his main skeletons using their sub-constructs differently. Sweeper, now is not time, Jay said, seeing that Sweeper had taken some bones and crafted some defensive spikes. Sweeper looked disappointed as it dropped the bones and waited by the throne. Alright now, bow, but what can I use for the string? He wondered, but he came up with no ideas. Damn, I didn't even consider it. Jay stood by Azra's wrapped blanket. Ah, Azra, are you still awake? Unfortunately, she sighed. Do you have any experience with making bows and bowstrings? Don't use a bow, Jay, you'll be wasting your time. Just stick to undead. The bow is for my undead. Oh well, what do you have access to? Apart from the forest and trees, the random animals that lamp catches. Vampires don't use bows, but in pantry, I've seen some husks use dried out animal guts. It would be better if you could find some flax or hemp, but I doubt you'll have much luck in a forest. Pretty low chances of finding any twine or silk out here, either. Would you have any? I only have some thread. And I'm not sharing it. Azra whispered. I see. Jay pursed his lips and went back to sitting on his throne, checking his inventory. He had another set of clothes which he didn't want to rip up, but as he looked through, he found something which was perfect. Ghost Silk X57. I completely forgot about this. I got it from the Silk Woods dungeon, I think it was called. A shiver went over Jay as he remembered the ether spiders with their semi-ghost bodies, all eating through the gigantic corpse of their brood mother, eating each other, piercing each other with venom. Cannibal spiders. He had enough of cannibals. Ugh. Glad I wasn't trapped there, he thought, bringing out one of the silk clumps. Ghost silk. Taken from ether spiders, it can turn into an invisible ether form when supplied with mana. While as light as air and as sticky as tar in its ether form, it can become as strong as steel while dormant. Dormant, that must mean when it's not supplied with mana. Jay thought, adding a tiny amount and making it invisible for a moment. It's good that it will become sticky when I add mana, as I'll need to attach it to the bows, but I know from other adventurers at the guild that they don't always have their bows strung, so I'll need to make a hoop at one end to it can detach to. I'm thinking too far ahead. First I'll need to make it into a string, he thought, holding the clump of silk. Jay began to pull it apart slowly, making it longer and more string-like. He pulled some parts away from the main clump, detaching them while trying to twist it and wind it, too. Ah, this will take way too long. The skeletons can do this part, he thought, sitting back on his throne. Blue, get 2 of your skeletons to do this, he ordered, and Blue brought 2 over. Jay showed the 2 skeletons in Blue exactly what he wanted, demonstrating how to twist it. He made sure Blue watched and learned, as it had a mind, and could teach it to other skeletons and monitor these 2 skeleton underlings, which Blue directly commanded. However, when the skeletons tried, they had no flesh and couldn't grip it. Jay thought for a moment. They can't twist it with their own hands. It was a simple solution to craft a bone shaft with a hoop on the end. He twisted and tied some silk around the hoop. This way, the skeleton would only have to twist the bone shaft. The second skeleton would have the simple job of dragging apart the silk clump. Jay watched them for a moment and made sure that the skeleton twisting went at a steady pace, while the skeleton pulling the clump apart kept the string uniform. With no clue about how to form a silk string, Jay was off to a good start. Now let's keep marching, Jay thought, storing the leftover bones back into his ring. Jay had Handy and Dark help to carry Azra, as 2 of the lesser skeletons were walking alongside Jay, making twine. Blue still carried Jay, but it periodically glanced at its 2 skeletons, making sure they were doing as Jay instructed. Don't worry, archers, we'll get you a bow in no time, Jay winked. Chapter 307. Necrotic Bolt. The party of undead traveled across a rocky area which separated the fog below from the mountain forests. Jay felt a little exposed as they left the cover of the trees, but above them there was nothing in the skies, and on this rocky green plain, there was no movement other than him and his troops. Just enormous rocks, many of which were covered in a thick layer of moss, almost forming a green carpet. It was a welcome change from the roots everywhere. As they moved downhill, the 2 skeletons he had spinning twine were running out of ghost silk, and had a silk twine of about 5 feet, 1.5 meters. Pass it, Jay ordered. The throne stopped its march for a moment and lowered, so the smaller skeletons could reach up and hand it to Jay. How do I stop it from untwisting? He wondered as he grabbed each end of the twine. Yet as he brought each end together, it twisted onto itself, making a loop at one end. That might work, Jay thought. However, now at half its length, it was too short to be used as a bowstring. Jay gave the skeletons another clump of ghost silk, and sent them to work again. He stashed the silk twine and waited. He would need about 3 or 4 clumps to make a full-size bowstring, perhaps 8 if it continually snapped, but for now, 2 would be enough to make a miniature bow for the goblin-sized skeleton. As for a bow, I'll make it when I figure out the string. He nodded. The throne lifted, and the party continued over the moss-covered rocks. Jay patted the invisible parasite on his neck. Natural form, buddy, he whispered to his helmet. The amulet around his neck floated, and similar to the necrotic gauntlet, it formed into a larger mass of bones which assembled into the helmet's body. The bone worm was about to fall onto the ground, but Jay reached out and grabbed it, holding it so it could mostly lay on his lap. Of course, it was getting quite large, so the lower parts of its tail hung off the throne, swaying below. The helmet looked quite content being so close to its master, though Jay was a little uncomfortable with its rib bones poking his legs. When you get bigger, you won't be able to do this. So enjoy it for now, Jay said, patting it with his necrotic gauntlet. The bone parasite pushed his head into his palm, lovingly accepting his pats. Jay didn't expect to enjoy patting it, even as his gauntlet made gentle scraping sounds across its slender skull, but a part of him felt wanted. He had planned to learn the necrotic bolt spell off of it, but for a few moments more, he enjoyed his creation. Alright, it's time I learn this spell. I have a bigger mana pool with some regeneration now, so it will be worth casting some necrotic bolts every so often. Hopefully, it won't be hard to teach to a skeleton. Jay picked a large mossy boulder about 54 yards, 50 meters, to the right. Go on, fire at it, he said, pointing. The link to the origin of this information resides within NOV Euros LSZN. The helmet complied, charging its necrotic bolt. Jay watched closely as its jaws opened, and a ball of the chaotic energy glowed. They concentrated the ball into a swirling orb, and suddenly the helmet shot it. Its jaws snapped shut as the ball of sickly green energy shot out. And this was when John noticed two things. The closing jaws of the helmet compressed the concentrated ball even more. As they closed, it squeezed at the ball out of its jaws at a high speed, forming the bolt. A burst of green mana energy followed behind the necrotic bolt, and Jay guessed it must have pushed more behind it as its jaws closed, giving it an extra boost of speed. The bolt shot off and hit the boulder he pointed at. Good. That's enough, Jay said, giving it a head scratch. It seems I'll need to compress the mana before firing. That will be hard without a pair of jaws. Jay tried releasing a stream of mana from his hands. At first he held the mana in his palm. He formed a ball, but as he tried to condense it, it began to warp and squeeze into different shapes. Small wisps of it escaped. Jay continued anyway, and holding his second hand behind it, he released more necrotic mana and pushed, trying to throw it. At a slow speed, the ball flew forwards about 9 feet, 3 meters, before it lost its shape and burst into a cloud of necrotic mana. Not useful in a fight. Pathetic. But a good start. He nodded, knowing he would need to practice it more before he gained it as a skill. Yet before he could try another, the skeletons suddenly paused. The throne stopped. Each of them raised their weapons. Suddenly, a rock shifted, falling off a boulder. Jay looked around, seeing and sensing nothing. Nothing but moss-covered rocks. A giant boulder suddenly tilted and slowly lifted, ripping away from the carpet of moss. Fuck, get us out of here, Jay ordered. If something was slow-moving, it usually meant it was powerful. And the helmet had just woken it up. The skeletons ran, carrying Jay and Azra as quickly as they could across the rocky terrain, not caring how much they were shaking them. Azra was much faster as she had more of the smaller skeletons carrying her, and Jay's throne was much more unsteady, making it hard to look back. Behind him, more giant mossy boulders raised. All my bones won't be able to stop that. Even a well of stone wouldn't stand a chance, he thought, seeing more rocks raising. Jay remembered fighting the wood elementals, guessing these were some type of stone elemental he had never heard about. Jay wasn't even close to getting to the fog below. The vast plain of rocks was about 7 miles wide, 11 kilometers, and Jay had not even made it halfway. Glancing back, he noticed it was the rock the helmet had attacked. Damn, it must have woken it up. Jay pursed his lips. But if they're stone elementals, how come they woke? He raised a brow. A necrotic bolt shouldn't affect stone. Chapter 308. Goblin Wand. Jay glanced back as the skeletons rocked the throne from side to side. Wait, he raised a brow. Slow down, he ordered. The boulders only raised slightly, and to Jay's surprise, they didn't give chase. In fact, they weren't fast at all. Stop. The skeletons came to a halt as he watched the shifting boulders behind them, and, without all the shaking, he noticed peculiarities. Each of the giant boulders had a smaller one next to it, which moved too. More of the moss pulled away as they moved, and Jay saw that these were not stone elementals at all. He was too far to analyze them, but he guessed accurately what they were. The link to the origin of this information resides within NOV Euros LSZN. Tortoises. Giant rock tortoises. He watched as they picked at and ate the moss off each other. The only one which didn't eat was the one the helmet had attacked. It turned around and was slowly crawling away from Jay and his skeletons. It seemed none of the others realized there was a threat around. Perhaps they thought their shells were impenetrable. "All right," resuming marching speed, Jay said while glancing back. The skeletons lowered their weapons and continued on the journey. As the tortoises moved and caused the earth to shudder, more awakened from their long slumber, and soon they had all woken up. About 100 of them, all as slow as each other, ignored Jay and his skeletons completely as they munched away at the moss carpet. "We better fire our attacks in the air until I can set up a target range. I don't want to risk awakening some ancient horror," Jay said to his helmet. The helmet snapped its jaws twice, which Jay accepted as an agreement. He pointed into the sky. "All right, show me again." The helmet charged and shot another necrotic bolt into the sky. Jay guessed it went about 220 to 300 yards, 200 meters, before slowing down and bursting into a dark green mist. Next time, maybe don't aim it so high. Something out there could see it. Definitely don't fire at night." Well, in the daytime it was a nearly unnoticeable green ball. At night it would have been a glowing beacon. Especially when it burst into a cloud before dissipating. Jay tried again, but this time, he tried to mimic the parasite's jaws. In front of his chest, he held his palms facing each other, and between them he funneled his mana into a ball, trying to push it together with his mind and hands. He crammed as much mana as he could into the chaotic sphere, and as it started to deform and ripple, he released it, pushing both hands forwards at once. A part of him felt a little childish doing such a movement to cast the spell. He had seen little kids in Losla doing the same gestures, imitating mages while they played. The necrotic ball wasn't as fast as his last one, but went further before it deformed and burst, getting about 16 feet, 5 meters. Still pretty abysmal. "I guess I'll have to practice," Jay thought, a little disappointed he didn't get any notifications. Jay tried to use his spell conduit, the goblin wand, but he couldn't even form a ball with it. The necrotic mana swirled around the wand, sticking to it, drawn to it like it was magnetized. Normally, Jay would need to hold it into shape so it wouldn't disperse. Jay tried to mold it into a ball at the end, but it formed a cone shape instead. Jay flicked the wand, but instead of an orb, it sent a wide leaf shape slash forwards. It was easy to tell from the green glow that it was necrotic magic, and the wand didn't convert it to something else. The first slash was quite slow as Jay had flicked slowly and only added about 5 mana to it, so he prepared another attack. This time, he stood up on his throne and reeled his arm back. 5 mana, 10, 20. The swirling cloud around the wand became thicker, darker, more potent. Jay added up to 50 mana into the goblin wand, which caused it to shiver in his grip. It was enough to summon 10 level 1 skeletons. "I think that's enough." The swirling mana chaotically spun round the wand, looking like a raging dark green river. Jay horizontally snapped his arm forwards, releasing all connection and control of the mana. The spell seemed to darken the world around them as he released it. A great arc of deadly magic shot forwards, over the heads of the skeletons. It sounded like a howling wind as it hungrily crossed over the stones. As it went further, the arc grew wider. The powerful spell grew weaker as it widened. It made it about 230 feet, 70 meters, before it lost its shape and burst into a wide glowing cloud. The cloud itself was about 50 feet wide, 15 meters. Jay tried the spell again with less mana, around 5. It traveled the same distance, but was only as wide as Jay's forearm. I wonder how strong it could be, Jay wondered. Regrettably, he received no notification, nothing about learning a new spell. He guessed it required a spell conduit, and that the conduit itself knew the spell. I wonder, do different spell conduits cast different spells? How much control does the caster have over the spell channeled through the wand? Will different mana result in the same or different spells? He wondered. He tried again, doing a few different techniques. After experimenting with the wand, he came up with 2 new techniques. A jet of necrotic mana which reached 10 feet, 3 meters, forwards, appearing like a flame, and a swirling necrotic lance-shaped sword. Unfortunately, the lance was more like a thick cloud, and could not block or cut anything, giving it no use as an actual sword. Probably needs different magic types to be useful as a sword. Jay shrugged, stashing it away. I wonder if my skeletons can use wands. Perhaps I could just craft one of their hands into a wand. A dedicated spellcaster would be a nice addition, Jay thought, letting his imagination spin for a moment. The 2 sub-skeletons of blue had finished twirling some ghost silk twice. Jay grabbed each end, but before letting it twist itself together, he brought out the first piece of ghost silk twine, which had a loop at the end. He slipped the second strand through the loop before letting it twist on itself. He frowned, holding his first bowstring. The twists of 2 pieces of ghost silk twine made it feel lumpy. It disappointed him a little, as it was pretty low grade. He tied the loose ends away, making what was effectively a rope made of 2 twisted strands. Jay had them craft another string. This time, he took out 2 clumps of ghost silk. Before handing them to the skeletons, he merged them and mixed them together into one larger piece, then broke them down into 3 smaller pieces. He stretched the 3 pieces out, making each of them much longer, uniform in shape and length, before handing them to the 2 skeletons. Blue, have them twist one at a time. Once they make the 3 strands, twist them together, but twist them in the opposite direction when you combine the 3 strands. Jay quickly thought of changes to the process before adding the first bowstring into a bow. The second string would be better, however, he would still try to use the low-quality string in his first bow. Alright, now to make a tiny bow, he thought, seeing the size of the level 1 skeleton he was making it for. Archers, you had better appreciate this. Chapter 309. Inventory Oddities. Are we close yet? Azra muffled from the wrapped noon leather blanket. About halfway. Is something wrong? Don't you usually sleep while we travel? I was sleeping to help my recovery. Even while I was being tossed and turned, it was easy to sleep. But I'm okay now, and I don't actually need that much to function, just a little blood. Can you drink animal blood? No, we need about 5 animals to make up for a sip of a human blood. It has something to do with mana in your blood, but I didn't really pay attention in class. Some animals have mana in their blood, but its strength disperses before it reaches our stomach, making it less nutritious. That's as much as I remember. I cared little about the subject as I never had to worry about getting blood until I left Luna, anyway. Jay noticed some sadness in her voice, so he didn't question her further. But Azra continued. Say, did you see any other cocoons? Any other vampires when you found me? I thought you would have forgotten about that. You seemed almost dead when I found you, and no. All the others had only bones. Mostly animal bones, I think. Any human-like skeletons? She asked, opening the blanket slightly. I don't think so. Some were unidentifiable though, broken down by time and the surrounding roots. Jay expected a response, but Azra went quiet. The skeletons continued to march. Something horrible happened. I won't press her for answers, he thought, and gave his skeletons silent orders from then on, not breaking the tense silence. Jay quietly began crafting the first bone bow for archers. He wanted to make the bow as large as possible to increase its damage, but it had to be small enough for the goblin-sized skeleton to hold without touching the ground, and its little arms had to pull the bow back. Jay took out 2 long, slender arm bones, the radius and ulna. At first, he joined them together at one end, but they were simply too brittle. They would not bend at all. This sucks, Jay thought, holding the conjoined bones. It's more like a skinny club than a bow. Jay tried a different approach, and holding the 2 bones, he channeled his mana into them, melting them completely. First, he mixed them together into a floating milky ball of bone. He then made it into a long rod, which went from being thick at one end to being as thin as hair at the other. This wasn't a bow, but was to help him test at what thickness the bone would bend. Alright, let's see how much this can bend, he thought, giving it a flex. Immediately, he snapped away some of the small end. He applied as much pressure as he thought would be put onto a bow, and snapped away more of the skinny end. It was a simple but effective way to find the right thickness of the bone bow. He found its right thickness was about half as thick as his finger. A pretty skinny bow. He got to work, melting the bone back into a sphere of bone, before he tried to push it into a long shaft. It was a simple task, as he had become used to making shafts for his bone spears, only that this was much skinnier. Jay found he had too much bone matter and ended up having a bone shaft, which was twice as long as he needed. Applying some mana, he split them in the middle. 2 long rods of bone were hardly bows, so using one of them, he applied some more mana, and began to slowly bend it into a curved shape, though he curled both ends back in the opposite direction from the middle curve, copying a bow design he saw at Lasla. Not too bad, Jay thought. However, as he tried to bend the bow, it hardly flexed at all, not nearly enough to pull back an arrow, and knowing what bone was like, he knew it would snap if he tried to flex it more. Damn it, bone is just way too brittle. The only time it does bend is when I infuse it with mana, but it doesn't bounce back. I guess I can't rely on bone for everything. He shrugged. As for a bow, I'll either need to find one as a dungeon reward or craft one from wood, Jay thought. For a moment, he considered using Life's Wood, an oddity he found in the Helvetian dungeon. Life's Wood. Life has touched the tree this wood came from, permanently blessing it. Time resistance 100%. Curse resistance 100%. Resurgence. Can grow back to its former self. However, as soon as he took a plank out, it sprouted tiny green buds. Yep, that won't work. He shrugged, stashing it away. I guess we'll just need to cut trees down. The link to the origin of this information resides within NOV Euros LSZN. Jay checked a few other things in his inventory. Warp Disruptor. CHARGED. Prevents warp, teleportation and trans-reality effects. Requires mana to function. Current charge. Can disrupt 4 times. I thought it had more charges. I suppose it has been a while since I checked it. Maybe I've just forgotten. He shrugged. Highborn Helvetian Ring. Protection from a single calamity. 0-1 charge. Can be recharged 0%. I suppose now that I have decent mana regeneration, I should start charging it. He thought, wearing it on one of his fingers. He added 20 mana into it, and felt the ring pulling it in, but it didn't even go up by 1%. Must need a lot of charge. It will be better to have it charged and ready. Just in case. Jay also retrieved another item from his inventory. Seems like it's gone bigger. He thought, holding a large oval stone in his hands. But what the hell is it? He wondered, staring into its galaxy-looking star-like surface before stashing it away. Jay also checked a few other things in his inventory, including his undead word seed, the soul stone which still had a soul inside it, and lastly a hexagonal sphere of bone which he plucked from a skull shield projector. I still need to study this. He thought, but seeing the tiny filaments on the sphere, he knew his scrimshaw level was not nearly high enough. He had a few other things in his inventory, odds and ends he had picked up along the way. Then, he retrieved the stealth shard. It was a type of communication crystal. Stealth shard. ATTUNED. UNCHARGED. Can be attuned to another stealth shard, forming a connection. Exchange senses activated when charged with mana. Exchange senses. No longer visible, but can now communicate. That person gave me this. What was her name? Laura. Lana. I suppose it doesn't matter now. They were liars anyway, giving me false promises of safety. He shook his head. There is no such thing as safety. At least in the sense of safety from other humans. He nodded. However, he did decide to charge it, adding some mana to it until it turned invisible, and then stashing it away. The skeletons had carried Jay and Azra halfway across the moss stone plain, and it made Jay feel a little odd to not really have a goal or objective. While taking her back to Luna was an option, he would not do it without having some sort of security or something to gain from it. If he needed to, he would hold Azra captive. Perhaps for ransom. He had not thought that far ahead, he simply wanted the necromancy research from her academy. Chapter 310. Precursor Prophecy. Near Reality 34, 3rd Academy. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door of the headmaster's office. Common Norgrim called, not looking away from his mana plant until the door closed again. William, I found him. I finally found him. William grinned. Good. Tell Lannister so he can draft a portal. We need to bring him in as fast as Norgrim pulled out his communication crystal, but before he could channel it, Will interrupted him again. I already did. He's already laid the portal frame. William grinned. Well, excellent work, Will. Excellent work. Norgrim smiled. I tell you, things are going to change. Once he joins our side, we may not even have to live in a fake reality anymore. The day will come. Norgrim said, turning to a framed letter on the wall. What is that? A prophecy, written by an elder of the First Academy. It says, our realities collapse, liberated by those we stole them from. They will take their time back, sending us forward. The dead will stand, we may scatter, may the dead lead us back together. Do you mind if I copy that down? Sure. Most people ignored it, thinking it will never happen in their lifetime, but now, with a necromancer, well, I think it's just a matter of time. Lasla. The forests around Lasla were being ravaged, filling with bounty hunters and adventurers from far-off cities, all chasing Jay's enormous gold bounty. After the SOAR protocol activated, causing the self-destruct mechanism of a mage hunter armor, many felt the powerful mana signature, and had ventured off into the southern forests, searching around the mountain range, as they connected it to J. They were closed in only by the mushroom desert. Even the sky had many adventurers flying around, scanning the ground and reporting back to their various teams. Each was like flies drawn to shit. They had carved a path through the forest because of the varying forms of transport of the adventurers. A giant mud golem cleared away trees, a magic rolling house crushed rocks, and a coating of ice covered most of the ground, which certain adventurers skated across. A division of mage hunters had arrived in Losla, and without pause, they sent half south to search for Jay, while the other half cut down every tree and made buildings in their place. Some buildings were simply wood, temporary shelters, while others being constructed were made using fort and stone magic. A network of bunkers and fortified strongholds sprang up around Losla. Some were mage towers, others were strongholds built into the ground, surrounded by thick metals, elaborate rune tapestries, and various magic defenses. Some were simply large floating spheres, ready to crush anything that challenged them, and a few were simply giant obelisks which pointed into the sky, threatening to piece whatever may attack from above. The mage hunters were quickly transforming Losla and its surrounding lands into a military fortress. It was hard to tell it was ever a quiet, lowly village on the edge of a strata. Yet the mage hunters were just beginning. Lieutenant Marsh was the commander of the first troop to enter Losla, and he knew he would be relieved of his command soon. He smoked a Voluvian cigar, patiently waiting in his makeshift office, as the higher authority finally arrived. Yet he didn't even sense them coming, and neither did they knock. As the door creaked open, Marsh's eyes widened. "Archmage," he whispered, and immediately averted his eyes, lowering them to the ground. He jumped from his chair and fell to his knees. "Archmage, forgive me. I was not expecting someone of your position to. SHH. A whisper sounded, coming from everywhere in the room. Marsh held his face to the floor, trying not to breathe in his presence. Suddenly then the door creaked shut again as they left the room without the sounds of footsteps. The Archmage left. Marsh gasped for air for a moment as a cold sweat went across his forehead. Yielding to the origin of this information resides within NOV Euros LSZN. Checking his desk, he noticed there were no files, no records, nothing. The Archmage had taken every file and document, including his cigars. "It's out of my hands. I had my chance," Marsh thought, clenching his jaw. Mirror Reality 34, Shrewbox Dungeon Level 3. I wonder how they link the dungeon portal to the real world. Smiley thought, entering the dungeon with a small group of 3rd Academy adventurers. As an experienced swordsman, he was a babysitter of some of the lower-level adventurers having trouble with their physical weapons. At least, that was what the staff did with him, to get some use out of him. Because of his harsh tactics, he was not one of the most favored trainers among the pupils, and as a prisoner, he wasn't allowed to do much else, so they wanted to keep him busy. To keep him out of trouble. Smiley, formerly known as Matheson, had made a few enemies because of his harsh training style, but also because he punished anyone who called him Matheson. He saw Anya a few times, but so far, she had not noticed him. Anya was still reeling from the death of her father. Like Matheson, they gave her the opportunity to guide and help other ranged students at the academy. Of course, unlike Matheson, they did not force her to do anything. Many appreciated her guidance, but she didn't connect with anyone. Anya mostly kept to herself. She was not comfortable at all, having restless nights with little sleep. She still needed time, though she couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't seen Jay yet. Where is Jay? Why is he avoiding me, she thought. No one had told her he didn't make it through the portal to the 3rd Academy. Anya wanted to leave, as something felt wrong about this place, not about the school, but about the entire mirror reality. Sometimes, the skies cracked open, wisps of chaotic darkness peeked through. The clouds would reverse as if going back in time, rain would fall upwards. She often heard deep quaking and screeching sounds, echoing from somewhere far away. The world groaned against them. Anya knew she didn't belong here, no one did. This was not their reality, they were outsiders. Invaders. Losla, Southern Forests. 3 young bounty hunters were sitting on a large mossy boulder in the forest. "Quiet," Ezra whispered. "But I was just saying, maybe we can go back, the bed's still there, you can still use your ability and..." "Quiet. Please, just be quiet for 1 second. I hear something." Ezra raised her finger. Vanderby shut his mouth as Link narrowed his eyes as his lips curled. They waited, staring at Ezra. I hear it, I can hear him. She grinned. Keep it down. Link waved his hand, scanning the surrounding forest. Right, okay. Well, finding a bounty in the city is one thing, but a fugitive of the entire kingdom is something else. Are we ready? Vanderby looked around, and Link and Ezra nodded. Okay, start your heart race and lead the way, Ezra, and try to make it look like you're guessing about where to go. I don't want other following us, he added. Ezra checked her skill and began listening to the rhythmic, gentle beating of Jay's heart. Heart race. You miss your beloved, listen for their heartbeats. You can hear their heartbeats no matter where they are in the world. Requirements met.